music. What is music? Most people would define music as the vocal or instrumental combination of sounds in such a way as to produce what? What exactly is being produced? A melody, harmony, rhythm, form? Music is merely a medium through which the universe speaks to the heart of man. In the context of video games, music is everywhere. It's used to guide the player not physically throughout the realm in which they dwell, but rather emotionally. It allows the player to emotionally connect with the atmosphere and story in a way that cannot be achieved in silence. Oftentimes when I, and I'm sure you, play video games, certain melodies resonate with me in ways that almost transcend the somatic aspect of the game being played. They take me from a state of simply playing a game to being part of an experience. Now, what I'm describing here is not rare, it's the goal of most, if not all, musical pieces in every game. Throughout this video, I'll be diving into why music in many iconic video games is so impactful and important to the quality and overall enjoyment of the game. Along with this, I'll be trying to uncover what exactly makes a game's soundtrack iconic and unveiling clever ways in which several developers have manipulated this beautiful language to tamper with the nescient mind of the player. I don't think there's a better way to start this video than with Super Mario Galaxy! Super Mario Galaxy. One of the games I'm most fond of from my childhood. When people talk about amazing video game soundtracks, it's hard not to mention the Mario Galaxy series. The soundtrack of this game is one of the greatest examples of theme embodiment. The elegant notes, twinkling stars, cosmic pulses, these guys knew what they were doing when tasked with creating the music for a space-themed Mario game. Now, I could talk for hours about each individual song within this game because they're all beautiful in their own way, but for the sake of this video, I'm only going to highlight the genius behind a few. One thing this game does extremely well is use sound to guide the emotion of the player, as it should be designed to do. For example, at the very start of the game, the player is greeted with the images of a storybook and one of the most comforting songs I can still recall from a video game. This song, called Luma's Song, immediately evokes a sense of childlike wonder and comfort into the mind of the player and accompanies the prologue of the game. Aside from the piece being absolutely beautiful and tapping into a deeply hidden childlike spirit, it's doing more than just mellowing your nerves. It also has a slightly sad tone, which I'll touch on later in the video. From the perspective of the game's creators, this entire scene is just subconsciously priming you for what's to come. Now, if you know what comes next in the story, you'd understand that the directors of the game are essentially creating a false sense of security in the mind of the player. They're setting a scene of peace and comfort, which is important. The scene that follows this is also one of my favorites from the whole series. The Star Festival. The storybook mentioned previously alludes to the true beginning of the game, which is when Mario arrives at the Star Festival. Every 100 years, the Mushroom Kingdom hosts an event to celebrate a comet that flies by. The scene opens with Princess Peach greeting Mario via a letter in the mail, inviting him to join her because she has a gift she wishes to give him. After this, the game begins as so. During the Star Festival, the music guides the entire scene. It begins with upbeat, frolicsome music and shows all the happy toads dancing around before swiftly transitioning to very menacing music when they get invaded. Everything leading up to the invasion, from the storybook sequence to the peaceful Star Festival, was cleverly designed to allow the player to resonate with the peace found throughout the Mushroom Kingdom before it's abruptly taken away by Bowser. All of the innocent toads which the player has grown to love and associate with happiness and harmony were brutally pillaged before their eyes. Not only does this grant the player with an immediate hatred for Bowser, but it deceives the player, creating a lack of trust throughout the entire game. This is potentially why, at several moments throughout the story, the player may feel uneasy despite nothing sinister directly happening. Your trust is betrayed almost immediately, and the music is heavily responsible for facilitating this feeling of betrayal. Now, obviously I'd be stupid to say that the music is entirely responsible for guiding the emotions of these various scenes, but try watching these clips muted and the importance of sound will be clear immediately. I'd be lying if I said I was some sort of music expert, and my knowledge of music theory is practically zero. However, the two pieces discussed previously are arguably perfect in my eyes. Both have a childlike tone, which is often associated with innocence and peace, two themes which are inherent to both scenes. This is because children have yet to be corrupted by the evil in our world and generally embody emotional purity, as they're essentially a blank slate. Another massive theme seen throughout this game is loneliness. Jacob Geller has an excellent video on this topic, and I recommend you watch it. He makes notice of a specific portion of this game after the Mushroom Kingdom collapses. After all the chaos unfolds, Mario wakes up on a tiny planet to which a dim chime plays and the camera zooms out. It's a choreographic effort to show just how lonely Mario is. Aside from the genius visual manipulation used, the sound design before and during all of this has the same effect but subconsciously. Similar to the trust of the player being betrayed by Bowser taking over and a sudden switch to a menacing tone, you could draw the same comparison in terms of the game's abrupt shift from a tone of community to loneliness. It goes from the comforting music heard during the Star Festival and Storybook to faint chimes as Mario sits alone on the tiny planet. The inclusion of the preceding scenes puts an emphasis on this loneliness that could not be achieved without them. In other words, the musical dichotomy accentuates the emotions in an extremely memorable yet subconscious way. Mario Galaxy prioritizes this emotional influence extremely well all throughout the game, and I'd argue this is a massive reason as to why it's renowned by so many. Again, the scenes are vital too, but the music used throughout these events guides the sentiment unbelievably well. I don't think that this video could even be taken seriously unless the Halo franchise was mentioned at least once. From the original trilogy through to Reach and even up to the newer games, this series has remarkable music. I mean, just listen to this. Again, for the sake of simplicity, I'll only be highlighting some of my favorite and what I believe to be most impactful music from all the games. I think there's no better place to start than with the original Halo theme song from Halo Combat Evolved. The iconic Gregorian chants, all building up to be one of the most epic introductions to a game series of all time. The impact of Combat Evolved's soundtrack cannot go unnoticed. It set the groundwork for one of the most iconic video game collections of all time. It has a primitive sound with the drums and hums, but also a futuristic flair when the pace ramps up and the strings and wind are introduced. This is fitting, as the game is set during a grueling war of humanity in an alien alliance well known as the Covenant. In my eyes, this choice of instruments is genius because the primitive nature of the drums and percussion allows the player to further immerse themselves in this world, while the futuristic sounds still hold on to the sci-fi theme of the game. They could have made the musical direction hyperspace themed, however they intentionally did not because it takes the player out of the era in which it's set. By incorporating less sophisticated melodies, the developers allow the player to resonate and immerse themselves into the gameplay more because it grounds the game back down to humanity. This applies throughout the entire series and is another example of the subconscious impact of music in video games. Another iconic song from the Halo series, commonly used in video essays such as this one, is Rain from Halo 3 ODST. Set in the wrecked city of New Mombasa, Earth, a rookie orbital drop shock trooper finds himself in a desolate, seemingly abandoned city in search of his squad mates he had deployed with in an unsuccessful mission. The plot of Halo 3 ODST is very different from that of the other Halo games and doesn't follow a typical storyline. Those who've played understand just how melancholy the tone is, and the music does an extraordinary job of guiding this mood. I mean, just listen to the notes of hopelessness, denial, failure, fear, regret. With Earth at risk, you, a rookie who dropped in with his team in an effort to save the planet, failed before even beginning, leaving you all alone in a hell-like city. I mean, if this isn't immersion, I don't know what is. Especially when you hear this music in combination with the harsh environment around you. However, this isn't the only time the Halo developers nailed this type of emotional manipulation. Flashback a little bit, right before the events of Halo Combat Evolved. Members of Noble Team are tasked with defending human-inhabited planet Reach and delivering both Cortana and the location of Halo to the UNSC ship Pillars of Autumn. Now, of all the Halo games, I think the story of Reach is my favorite, and this isn't an uncommon take. It's a rare example in which the character you play as and the ones you play alongside ultimately fail in their mission. It's made clear in the opening cutscene, but if you didn't know, the planet Reach ultimately falls to the Covenant at the end of the game, and the player's character, Noble 6, dies along with it. With that, the music that accompanies these first scenes is not sad or gloomy, but rather seemingly filled with hope and resilience. Despite outright telling you that your character is going to die, the directors choose to use music that represents spiritedness? What's important to understand is that as the game progresses and the situation on Reach continues to decay, it slowly starts to become clear to the members of Noble Team that they likely aren't going to make it out alive, leading to multiple sacrifices, including the sacrifice of Noble 6, your character. Now, in terms of immersion, the opening of the game literally shows you a cutscene of your character's helmet on the floor displaying his inevitable death, and yet it greets you with this music. The developers could have just as easily opened the game with sad music and set the tone of the game to be an obvious tragedy, which it is, but instead chose to lead you off in the same mindset as Noble Team. You see, the music here isn't preparing you for a story of victory and triumph, nor is it preparing you for a story of sadness and defeat. It's preparing you to put your life on the line defending Reach. An act of nobility, perhaps? It's preparing you for a sacrifice that you know is coming and which you know you will ultimately have to make, similar to that of Noble 6 as you near the climax of the game. In other words, you'd imagine Noble 6 to be feeling the same type of emotion that this music is trying to invoke throughout his journey. You don't play this game as an outsider looking in. You are Noble 6 and you know what you have to do. Through the use of this symphony, the directors are essentially unifying the souls of both the player and Noble 6, the protagonist. This may be why many people attest to feeling as though they're part of Noble Team while playing this game. The feeling of hope, this hope starting to fade, the sense of time running out, all of these emotions felt by Noble Team throughout the story, and yet, thanks to musical manipulation, you feel them as well. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. One of, if not the most important game in terms of my inspiration for this video. I don't say this lightly. I believe The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild has the greatest musical direction of any mainstream game I've ever played in my life. Now, I know that might be crazy to say, and I'm not saying its songs are the greatest of any game, though there's definitely an argument for that, but the way in which the creators manipulate music to steer the emotions of the player is genuinely unlike anything I've experienced before. If you haven't played this game, I highly encourage you to, even if you aren't a fan of the Zelda franchise, because I'm almost certain it'll change your perspective on gaming. The first ingenious thing that this game does in terms of its music is use it to control pace. You see, unlike most of the other Zelda games, you aren't constantly being stimulated with adventurous music throughout your entire journey. In fact, for most of the game, where you spend your time wandering the wilderness and uncovering its mysteries, the player is mostly treated with dull chords and seemingly strange intervals. This was a controversial move when it first came out because at times it can make the game feel boring and monotonous as opposed to just captivating the player with adventure-filled melodies constantly. But you see, this is what makes Breath of the Wild's music so good. They don't overdo it. As opposed to washing out each individual adventure throughout the game with thrilling music, the director chose to dim it down and keep a more gentle tone. It allows the player to engage more with the actual atmosphere and wilderness of the game on a more personal level, fitting for a game called Breath of the Wild. But I haven't even mentioned the most important part. By dampening the music throughout large portions of the game, the player is granted a massive appreciation for when more robust music is used, such as when entering villages, stables, and places inhabited by other people. It also puts an emphasis on the importance of these locations in a subconscious manner. I've mentioned immersion several times across this video because it's important in the context of music and is usually the entire point of it. You see, by guiding the music in this way, the player is far more immersed as changes in the monotonous tone of the game are made very apparent. I mean, when I first played this game, I kinda skipped a lot of the important notices telling me where to go, and I felt the loneliness and serenity of Hyrule. Unguided by dishonestly ambitious music, I was left with the quietness of the wild. So you bet, when a Blood Moon or Guardian appeared and the music suddenly shifted to a frightening tone, I absolutely splattered my pantaloons. But oh my lord, after so much wandering, I still remember the comfort I felt when this song faintly chimed in as I neared Rito Village. From a state of complete desolation, I entered into what felt like home. The music itself is absolutely beautiful, but in my eyes, the way in which it's led is even more beautiful. Now, I haven't spoken much on the actual quality of the songs used throughout this video because I think it mostly goes without saying, but especially for mainstream Nintendo games such as the ones mentioned, they almost always have a magical flair to them. From Mario Galaxy to The Legend of Zelda, Animal Crossing, Metroid, Pokemon, Donkey Kong, Kirby, Mario Sunshine, and even Billy Hatcher. All of these games and franchises have soundtracks that could easily earn their own video, and I think it's due to Nintendo's mastery of musical direction. I mean, it's no coincidence that there exists a massive genre of music for studying/relaxation purposes that features a large amount of Nintendo's work. These songs are just good and very often soothing. Sometimes it almost seems as if they're calling you to a place you felt destined to reach all your life and connect to a childlike wonder or adventure. Perhaps many people feel so connected to music like this because they grew up hearing similar stuff when they were young and unknowingly hear remnants of familiar songs. After all, the peaceful nature of a lot of these songs are kindred with many aspects of childhood, such as watching cartoons, playing outside with your friends, playing video games obviously, etc. As you grow older, you begin to lose touch with music like this and definitely don't hear it in natural settings nearly as often. If you are going to listen to music like this, you usually have to go out of your way to do so, and as a consequence, many people become disconnected from this kind of peace. It could be that the reconnection with music like this after being deprived of it with age is what gives it so much power, similar to how the use of dull piano strokes gives the hearty music of Breath of the Wild more impact. I think so, at least. Something I haven't talked too much about in this video is nostalgia and how it affects our perspective on both video games and, more importantly, the music within them. Now, I feel that it's necessary to talk about how this feeling of almost homesickness for a time long past influences our present perspective on games and everything for that matter. As I listen to From Past to Present from Skyrim, I'd be lying if I said I don't feel a sense of attachment to it. I often think how, from the perspective of someone who's never played the game, it might just seem like any old tranquil explorative music from anything else. When I hear it, it takes me back to exploring Whiterun and all of the greatness that Skyrim has to offer, yet I acknowledge that this may be my own bias speaking. You see, one of the main reasons as to why video game music is so attractive to many of us is not just because of the music on its own, but obviously the combination of it with visuals, story, adventure, etc. My point here is that a lot of the times people will claim music or games to be amazing and not acknowledge the influence of their own bias. One of the greatest examples of this in my opinion is Minecraft's soundtrack. Now, before I start talking about Minecraft, I want to mention that everything I say is in reference to the OG soundtrack, alright? None of that new gen horse fucking slop. When Minecraft first released for Xbox 360 on May 9th, 2012, I remember playing it extensively. To this day, I would consider Minecraft to be the most influential game on both my life and the overall gaming industry since the release of the original Super Mario Bros. More than COD, more than Zelda, Fortnite, Half-Life, more than just about everything. However, I often see its soundtrack get more credit than it deserves in my eyes. Don't get me wrong, I love the Minecraft soundtrack and it practically raised me, but that's exactly why I think it's overrated. I literally recall playing Minecraft as a kid and the music back then being nothing more than just peaceful notes to stimulate the mind of a child. I specifically recall thinking nothing of the music. Perhaps my feeble mind was unable to comprehend the emotions behind these notes, but I really think that these songs were just secretly brainwashing me. When I watch modern Minecraft gameplay, I think nothing of it, but when I hear the music chime in, it takes me right back to when I was a kid. As I write this, I'm finding a lot of parallels between my own thoughts and those of jschlatt in his video A Tribute to Minecraft. And I mean, what I'm describing isn't an intellectual thought only geniuses can conceive. I'm sure many of you have thought the same thing. But it's important to recognize your own bias when you analyze anything. You don't love the Minecraft soundtrack, you love the joy it brought your childhood self, and you miss that piece. That, coupled with the majestic nature of the game, and you got memories for sure. But I mean, if you want to see majestic, look no further than... You know, I use the word majestic, but I feel like epic describes Super Smash Bros. Brawl's soundtrack better. The opening theme of this game is just outstanding. You may think, this is weirdly Romanesque and triumphant for a Nintendo game, but oh my goodness, is it genius. What better way to introduce a game about a grand clash between some of the most iconic video game characters in history than with some of the most dramatic and glorious music I've ever heard. The overall guidance of this game's soundtrack is just amazing and carries a very recognizable identity. It sets up the scene for an almighty showdown in an extremely exciting way and immediately delivers to the player that shit's about to get real. And with such distinct musical personality, this game was designed to be remembered. You can tell the composer Nobuo Uematsu was heavily inspired by not only his past work on Final Fantasy, but definitely some real film scores and classical music. But aside from all that, there's just a little more I want to talk about. You know, I could have spent this entire video just glazing the entire Zelda franchise, but I feel like most of what needs to be said already has been, especially in terms of its music. On that note, there is one little comparison I'd like to draw between two of my favorite games. The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker. Another one of my most revered narrative experiences. After watching your sister get kidnapped, it's up to you to save both her and the world from evil. Raised on Outset Island, your character, who begins his journey as just a boy, battles through some of the worst evils known to be and throughout slowly grows into maturity. The story of Wind Waker, if not an action-adventure, is a coming-of-age story of a nameless boy. The hero is easy to relate with, and this is why you give him a name at the start of the game. With that said, one thing I love about this game is its use of the boy's grandmother. Throughout all of the adventures of the game, Outset Island remains mostly static, and so does the state of the boy's grandma. She had fallen ill due to the heartbreak of what had happened to the world around and sits in her house weak and unresponsive for most of the game. Despite this, you're free to visit her whenever you please, and every time you do, it plays this soothing melody. Now, when I played this game for the first time, I remember just how grounding it felt every time I would revisit Outset for the sake of checking up and see my grandmother while this song played. It's a warming song with a sense of comfort, but also has a slightly sad tone to it, just like, you guessed it, Luma's song from Mario Galaxy. It's like revisiting Outset Island each time, and seeing my grandmother in her state while this song played was a reminder of why this whole journey started and acts as an inspiration to continue. Similar to how Galaxy's Luma's song is accompanied by a prologue and shows you just exactly what you'll be fighting for throughout the game, Grandma's theme essentially has the same effect in my eyes. I started this video off by dissecting the opening of Super Mario Galaxy. This opening is crucial for laying down the emotional setting of the game, and it's done extremely well. Now, the songs used throughout the entire game are exquisite, however, if you've played the game, you would know about the Comet Observatory. It's essentially the hub of the game that you visit in between levels, and it plays this iconic music. One thing many people don't know is that as you progress through the game and collect more power stars, this theme song develops along with you. In fact, it has 3 total variations. You see, what Nintendo is doing here is allowing the player to connect with the music and atmosphere of the game in a unique and subconscious way. As you fight these battles and become more confident with the environment and dynamics around you, you also slowly find comfort through the use of more pronounced and emotionally loud music. Perhaps Nintendo is posing an allegory of life. When we start new endeavors and shift from our typical routine, things may feel very lonely and quiet. But as we develop and struggle through the complexities of life, the music in our hearts begins to play louder. And so, if anything is to be taken from this video, let it be that no matter what situation you're in, whether you failed a test or had your entire kingdom sucked into deep space, if you work hard and pick yourself up, the symphony of life will always guide you.